Welcome loreheads to another 40k video as we stare through the Akashic Reader at the timeless depths of the warp, where all stories are already written. Now witness Heretical knowledge, which focuses on the Phosphex, a weapon so powerful that Rabuti turned his back on using it, and would say, without a doubt, singularly, the most deplorable man-manufactured weapon that humanity has ever, to its shame, unleashed upon a living world. An incendiary of the most volatile nature, it had the capacity to burn without oxygen, and with next to no fuel source. It was capable of burning underwater, in fact it set the water itself alight, and would burn through solid rock, through the most fire-hardened ceramite and adamantium, absolutely devastating any carbon-based life that it touched. Known variously as the living fire, crawling death, ice fire, due to its attraction to movement and sub-zero burning temperature, once unleashed it expanded exponentially, burning everything in its path. It was designed for one purpose, the absolute eradication of life on a world. The taint of its residue was far more enduring than the most deadly radiation from nuclear fallout and plasma core exposure, rendering any lands exposed to its touch uninhabitable. Not even the Death Guard favoured its use in any but the most extreme circumstances, and even then only on the order of a legion's most senior echelons of command. The use of Phosphex had only twice been sanctioned for use by the primarch of the XIII Legion, and then only upon isolated regions. But a small number of its most powerful warships held the munitions in their armouries still, for use in extremis. Perception Primus, Chapter Master Decimus, had decreed was such a case. Now listen to what this does once it hits there. Initially is launched with a single man portable Phosphex bomb. It had the capacity to contaminate the air and soil where it was detonated for 1,000 years. You will not be holidaying there anytime soon. Never in Legion history had an entire payload been unleashed though, and they were unleashed in a single bombardment. In theoretical simulations, a world that suffered such an attack of exterminatus would never recover. In all, 24 Modalis class atmospheric missiles were launched from the Righteous Fury at the surface of Perception Primus. All of them struck the planet's singular supercontinent, spread across a dispersal zone at 10,000 kilometers wide. Each targeted a key strategic location, the coordinates of which had been uploaded from the communications subbase within the mountains. The word-bearers' extraction points, the city of Massilia, the field of war where the chapter master had drawn the enemy legionaries in strength. The Righteous Fury was destroyed with all hands 3 minutes and 27 seconds after the first payload was launched. The word-bearers' Legion cruiser Sanctified claimed the kill. By then though, the surface of Perception Primus was already burning, and at ground zero the wall of roiling pale green chemical fire crashed over them, lifting them from their feet and hurling them back. All the word-bearers were thrown around like rag dolls. Saw Talgron of the word-bearers bellowed as he was smashed against the mountain with bone-shattering force. His cries were lost in the deafening roar of the poisonous inferno. He could see little, the white mist and pale flames surrounding him, though he caught glimpses of legionaries being tossed around, like the playthings of cruel gods. It was like being in the grip of a fiery cyclone. Though the clouds were made up of the strongest corrosive chemicals ever devised by man, Loth and his recon squad were the first to perish, their stripped-down armour the least able to resist the toxic winds. Their plate dissolved upon their flesh, consumed by a fierce, burning coldness. Skin and muscle tissue turned molten, and bones burned as meat slipped from them. Helm lenses shattered, and eyes and brains were liquefied, burned out within their skulls in an instant, creating a hideous milkshake. Sir Talgron felt the acidic burn as his armour seals gave way. The agony was excruciating, worse than anything he had ever experienced. His face already bore evidence of rad scarring and nuclear burns, but the pains of those injuries was as nothing next to the horrific sensation of the Phosphex melting into his flesh. The blast wave was past them, leaving Sir Talgwan and his warriors reeling, stumbling around on the melting platform, their bodies awash with choking, corrosive fire. None of them had escaped its rage. Half of the legionaries were dead already, their bodies burning fiercely on the deck. Sir Talgon's flesh was aflame, and he dropped to his knees as the tendons, ligaments and muscles in his ankles and knees were consumed, his integrity seals finally giving way completely. His entire body was awash with burning agony, without and within. His muscles turned to fire, both hearts to blame for his inability to move, now that they were set ablaze. His helm grills dissolved inwards, and he inhaled the burning acidic mist, breathing it into his lungs. His visor lenses had been eating away, and his eyes melted, running down his searing cheeks. He fell, writhing, agony searing through every nerve ending. His flesh was being broken down, eaten off his bones, flickering with pale flame. His armour was alight, being stripped back to its base constituents and devoured. The very air he breathed was a poisonous fume. He struggled to push himself upright, but not with the strength of 10,000 men could he do this. But it was a battle, as I said, he could not win. His will alone was not enough. He fell again, and this time he did not rise. But a stormbird descended, buffeted by the roiling eddies left in the wake of the cyclopean detonation. It came in hard, and the writhing, cloying mists clinging to the mountains rose to meet it. Reaching out with tendrils of flame, jet turbines rotated downwards, and the gunship roared in under the deep overhang of the landing platform. Its claws, landing gear was not extended. The platform was no longer solid, but its assault ramp lowered, opening to the roiling tumult beyond. It hovered unsteadily in the air, shuddering and reeling as the white flames licked through its chassis and began to burn. Two figures bedecked in flaming cataphracti armour stood awaiting it. A charred figure held between them. Half crawling, half limping, they staggered towards the gaping ramp, dragging the lifeless warrior. It was too much for the first of them. Even the immense void-hardened cataphracti suits were not enough to maintain their integrity against the ravagers of Phosphex. He collapsed, and the last standing legionary on perception primus hauled the charred body up onto the ramp alone, pushing it in before clambering up and collapsing inside. The Stormbird's hull was slowly being eaten away. Once in the void, it was given a reprieve from the effects of the Phosphex. Extended exposure to a cold vacuum was the only way to put out those flames once they had taken hold, and so Talgon was saved. His body rebuilt later, and he became a dark apostle, and he fell during the Siege of Terror in battle against Fafnir Ran. And like Kenny in South Park, you cannot kill this guy. He later becomes a dreadnought within the ranks of the Word-Bearers. As for the Phosphex, you don't hear much about it. Its star has definitely descended. It's pretty much an extinct weapon. The last STC fragment that held the secret of its creation was lost when a tech priest, Viriliad, seeing the evil in the weapon, destroyed it. For this he was declared heretic and burned at the stake. What do you think to the vileness of this weapon that leaves no hope of life on the planet for so long? Do you understand why Rabute thought so low of it? Despite so many other weapons being at its disposal of the Primarch? Comment down below.